Waiting for approval.
It say waiting for approval.
How you doing, Ed?
Eric, I'm talking to Mike right now on the phone here. So when you get to that main screen, over onto the left, like where it say sessions, network, expo, all that stuff.
Right.
See that? So if you go to sessions, So when you go to session, you'll see two programs going on right now. Ours should be the one on the right.
Impact of real estate. So click on that.
Yeah, click on that, and then it's gonna ask you to share your audio.
Oh, okay, I got it. It might be a month.
All right, so I wonder if I need to let P know that. Yours said Ed Mathis. I don't know why. I guess, does mine say my name?
Yes.
Yeah, mine says, to me, it says you. For me.
Yeah, for mine, it says you. Does mine say Eric?
Yeah, it says Eric Denson.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and tell Alex to go ahead and hit apply. Let me call him real quick. All right.
Can you hear me clear, Eric?
Yes.
Okay.
How about here?
Looking good, man.
P, when you get to that video where it says apply, so when you get into the one site, when you first click on the link and it comes up, go to the left and hit sessions. The session will come up, it'll be 2. Ours is on the right. Click on that, then a little video will come up again with your face on it. Then at the bottom, hit apply. Yeah.
They about to send them our way now.
Yeah, so you should be coming in a minute. If you hit apply, you should be coming in. Yeah, so when the video came up, it was just your little face, sort of like a little TV, sort of like when we on Zoom, your little face came up, and then at the bottom had a blue button that says apply. Click that, and then wait a few seconds, you'll pop in with us. Share audio and video, hit that.
Mm-hmm.
Here you come.
There you go.
Look at that.
There he is.
Fellas, gentlemen. What's up, man?
Here we go.
Yeah. Hey, you're looking real dapper, brother. You know?
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I had to get a different angle this time, man.
I love it. It's good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
So down at the bottom right, it tells us how many requests to get in the queue.
So right now they must have finished up the other session because it looked like the numbers going up at the top. So everybody moved over to us. So we should be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. So I went ahead and responded to Jalita.
Here we go. You're good to go.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this platform right here as I speak with Mike Smith, Ed Mathis, and Eric Denson. My name is Alexander Pizzo, and today we're going to be touching on quite a few things, but Mike, we're going to start off with building wealth. And, everyone has a different take when it comes to building wealth, but one of the things that I want to touch on right off the bat is, Mike Smith, give me your blueprint for building wealth. What has worked for yourself and what has been successful for you to grow, build, and scale wealth for yourself and your family?
Well, I followed the traditional pattern that most folks in our country have followed to gain any type of wealth in our country. And that is, to start a business, participate in the stock market, and or the real estate market. So any combination of those three is what I try to follow. So when you look at, because we're talking about starting a business, a small business, you look at in our country, if you're African-American business owner, you start a business and you work hard to make that business viable and it's making money. And then along the way, you hire folks from your family, folks in the neighborhood. You're looking at, after a while, once that business is viable, you're passing it down to your family members who can take it and run from there and continue the tradition and continue to live and save money from the business. But also, when you look at the folks from your community, you're building wealth in the community because you're allowing folks in your community to have somewhere to work. And hopefully it's a situation that can be a work, live, play situation where they're working there, they're living in the community, and there's other amenities. But also, when you talk about neighborhoods in the community and in our neighborhoods, what makes neighborhoods valuable is to have some kind of economic base. And that means having businesses in the neighborhood where folks can walk to, having amenities where other businesses can come and start up and set up shop, where their employees can actually have places to walk to for lunch or somewhere to go right after work. And all that together builds wealth in that particular community. So with me, I'm trying to follow that path. I'm trying to follow the same path when it comes to starting a business, the stock market, and with real estate.
So, Mike, you threw out a lot of great ideas and a lot of great things in terms of your blueprint. But let's go back to the stock, because when you throw out stock, that could simply means I have an Ameritrade account or an E-Trade account or Robinhood, and I'm just out there just purchasing stock. What is your secret sauce, or what is your secret ingredient in terms of how you go about purchasing stock?
Well, I do have my own plan that I like to work, but again, traditionally, if you follow what we call purchasing blue chip stocks, what are the safest, and what blue chip stocks are the stocks that make up the Dow Jones index. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average. These are the stocks that have been the market leaders in their respective industries. So you're looking at companies like 3M, Procter & Gamble, those particular stocks. Those would have been, Walmart. Those have been in Walgreens. Those have been the market leaders. So over time, those stocks in the blue chip stocks have had an average return of about 10% over time. So if you look at investing in blue chip stocks, which is a safer route, you look at the rule of 72. So when you have the rule of 72, basically you can divide what your return would be by 72, and it will tell you how quickly you can double your money. So if you're an investor and you've been investing in blue chip stocks over time, a 10% return, that means 7.2 years, typically you're going to double your money. So in that first session of 7.2 years, you're going to double your money. Then in the next 7.2 years, you're going to double the money that you doubled from when you started. And then that just continues. So that is a safe route for anybody that would like to start to invest in the stock market.
So basically what you just laid out to me with the rule of 72 at that 7.2 years, we're looking at in about 14 and a half years, we're looking at about 3 to 4 times growth on our initial investment. So that's a great ROI, return on investment, so to speak, right?
That's exactly right, Alex.
Yeah. Now, I love how you laid that out, but here's the next thing where I want you to kind of segue and take us into. So we spoke about blue chip stocks, the importance of having those blue chip stocks, but Let's talk about the importance of really having a legitimate playbook. But in addition to having a playbook, how can I use in times like this with COVID, where interest rates on savings accounts are not very high, interest on a mutual fund, or even interest on putting money into a CD is not very high. How can I use certain stock as a savings vehicle, as opposed to just I'm investing in long-term stock?
Well, you look at now, because of COVID and because of the situation we're in, man, the stock market basically is on a 50% discount. So, the plan that I've put forth, that you and I have talked about over time, is trying to gather those transportation and hospitality stocks like Royal Caribbean, American Airlines, Delta, Georgia Pacific, and those type of stocks, because right now you're buying it at a discount. If that company was trading 52-week high was $135, it's probably still a $135 company. It's just because of the times that we're in, it's discounted at $60 or what have you. So I'm trying to invest in those stocks right now. But also, another thing, a tradition, is that you should always, not always, but if you want to be more wealthier, try to save to invest. Don't just save and put money in your savings account that's paying less than 1%. Save that money, set aside some money that you can actually run your household, take care of your bills. But the majority of that money should go into an investment, mutual funds, stock, etc., bonds, or what have you. And what I try to do is I try to use a money market that I have with a mutual fund I have with Fidelity Savings. And I try to hold my money there. They don't charge for a trade. I try to sit that money there. When it gets up to a certain level, then I just start buying, stock and putting that money in and investing it.
Okay, so you brought up a great point. You said save to invest, don't just save to save. But let me throw this out at you. Statistics show in the African American community, it's really rampant that we spend more, we waste more, we own less, and we save less. So you're telling me to save with the purpose to invest. Let's speak to priority-based investing versus consumer-based investing, because I close that wealth gap. There have to be some budgets put in place and some factors that play into and lend to us being able to save with the purpose, as opposed to just trying to put a few coins away.
Well, the thing about it is, man, if you can set up as much automatically to save as possible, then it does the job for you. The whole key about building wealth is being consistent over time. So especially young folks, I tell them, if you get a new job and it has benefits, your 401k, 403b, thrift savings plan, what have you, that retirement plan is a part of your total benefit package. So as soon as you get in, you sit down, you set up, and you go through orientation. As soon as they say it's lunchtime or whatever, go find you take your laptop, sit down, set up that 401k, and put the money into start contributing to that 401k. And another mistake that some people make sometimes is that if your company is contributing 7%, if they're matching 7% dollar for dollar, don't contribute just 5%, because you're leaving 2% on the table from that employer. So contribute at least what that employer is matching, and then over time start to gradually build up. So if you're investing 7% today, maybe next year, the year after, get to 8% and try to work your way to 10%. But I try to use automated platforms to be able to build that wealth.
Well, let's go back to you talking about investing in your 401k or 403b, and let's specify the importance, because let's say you come in and that package, let's just use a blanket, $100,000 is your salary, right? And you come in and your company matches up to 10%. They match up to 10%, and you have an opportunity to put in 10 and they'll match 10. That's like getting 20 and 10% free money, right?
Exactly.
Not only is that huge from a standpoint of the fact that they're willing to match that, but that's also huge from a tax ramification standpoint as to what you will be taxed on at the end of the year. So kind of speak to what you'll be taxed on in terms of at the end of the year.
Well, again, I'm not an accountant, but the basis is that it reduces your earning. So if you make $100,000 per year and you're putting 10% into your 401k, it reduces your taxable income by $10,000. So now you're only getting taxed on $90,000. But another thing is that, since we're talking about small business or what have you, when you go want to borrow money from a bank and you talk about the 5 C's of credit, one particular thing is collateral. So banks want to see that you have some kind of collateral, not just, a lot of times you can't use your retirement program, but if you use an automatic savings program, they want to see that you have some type of wealth that has been built from over time. So when you look at that personal financial statement, which is a very important piece of paper when you're talking about lending, that 401k, 403b, that retirement program should be one of the probably top 2 numbers on your personal financial statement, other than your home or real estate.
That's great stuff. So Yvette Fleetwood has a question. She said, as an upstart, what retirement savings vehicle do you recommend? Go ahead and touch on that, Mike.
I would say select a mutual fund. I don't know how old you are or what your risk tolerance is, but I would select a mutual fund that you can actually invest in, and it doesn't just invest in 1 or 2 stocks. It probably has 100 stocks. If you look at Morningstar, you can select a particular mutual fund, look at Morningstar and see how it's rated. It's rated 1 through 5. I try to stick with 5s, obviously, or 4 and 5s. And then I look at its top 10 holdings just to see what those top 10s are. So the older you are, the less you want to invest into actual stock or marketable securities. The younger you are, the more risk you want to be able to take. But one thing you can do is, I am not a financial planner, but I would always suggest taking some time, scheduling it with a financial planner, and having them take you down a plan for your future. Alex, are you still with us, buddy? So Alex, looks like we may have a little technical difficulty. So another piece of our traditional wealth building strategy was real estate. So how you doing, Alex? You were stuck, so I was getting ready to transition over to Ed when it talks about real estate, but I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so I just have one last.
Okay.
And hopefully Eric will be able to join us again.
Okay.
And thanks again, Yvette, for that question. The one piece we always seem to leave out, Mike, is the importance and how life insurance is undervalued in the African-American community. Because I've always said to myself, outside of education, I think life insurance is the great equalizer. You may not be able to receive the benefits while you're here, but look at how you set up that next generation, and providing on how you plan it, maybe 2 generations. If your playbook is in order and that blueprint is laid out, they'll know what to do with those funds once they're given to them. Then keep this in mind. There's no estate taxes. There's no capital gains taxes. So speak to me on life insurance before we transition to Ed and start talking about commercial real estate.
Well, when it starts with life insurance, I try to stick with term because it's a little less expensive. Where if you had universal, whatever, they're taking your money and then investing it for you. Where term, you're paying just the minimum, and then you can invest the money that you would have invested in another type of plan yourself. But when you think about the cost of life insurance and the effort to do it, you can get some decent packages for $40, $50 a month, depending on your age, and you can start to contribute that. The younger you are, the less it costs. So that's something that in the Black culture, we something that I think over time we lagged in looking at it and the importance of it, because as you stated, man, that's something that's going to pass right down to the next generation. It's going to give them a good start, but we might not necessarily want to just do the insurance alone. We also may want to leave a playbook when we talk about having a will, a trust, etc. To be able to contribute that. And the last thing I want to say before we transition to Ed for real estate is that the importance of your health when it comes to wealth, because the better shape you're in, the more healthy you're in, the longer you can be around, the longer you can help guide those younger folks in your family when it comes to running a business, about purchasing real estate. The longer you're around to help guide them to put together their playbook and start to diversify their situation to build wealth over time. So let's not overlook the importance of health.
Absolutely. And I actually had as my final note before we transition to Ed is a lot of folks tend to say time is money, but in most cultures they say your health is your wealth, because the long game is what we need to play, not the short game. The longer we're in the game, the more we're able to do and means towards paying it forward to that next generation.
Yeah.
So Mike, great stuff. Really love some of your ideas on building wealth. And Eric is not with us for whatever reason, so we're going to go ahead and transition to Ed. And Ed Mathis, listen, we had a run through, and I was just able to hear some of your knowledge when it comes to commercial real estate and the importance of commercial real estate. And I know we touched a lot on leases and that triple net lease and different things of that nature, but I want you to kind of walk us through what exactly you do when it comes to that commercial real estate process. And then we'll kind of get into some of the questions, some of the why behind the what. So go ahead and lay it out for us, Ed.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Ed Mathis. I'm with Republic Commercial Real Estate. My primary business throughout every day is to help clients buy, sell, and lease commercial real estate. I don't do any residential at all. I do exclusively commercial deals. So my day typically looks like working with a client, whether they have office needs or retail needs. I help them identify locations. I help them run through what it would take for them to occupy that particular space or purchase that property. And then I work with them on whether that's finding finance or whether that's negotiating the terms of the lease or the terms of the contract. And that's pretty much what I do on a daily basis. And I think I do pretty well at helping people get a good deal.
Great. Well, listen, I've heard nothing but great things, so I'm going to run with you, whatever you and Mike say. So with that stated, let me throw this out at you. In times of COVID and the great pandemic, we're getting ready to go into what we refer to as the twindemic, which is COVID and then flu season. Are you looking to see your numbers in terms of potential commercial real estate clients ramp up, or are we getting a sense of, listen, let's scale back? You start looking at a lot of the major chain companies that are going out of business and getting away from brick and mortar. What is the importance of brick and mortar as we move forward?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's certain guys in this industry that exclusively focus on different sectors. So the places that I'm seeing take a majority of the hits right now are going to take a majority of hits for at least the next year and a half are going to be the guys that are in that downtown office tower, those office parks. Those you're seeing those guys are really taking a hit right now because majority of their clientele are working from home. I mean, the double-edged sword of this worker from home thing is it's a good thing to keep us away from the pandemic, but also it's a bad thing for landlords and brokers because that bell has been rung that, hey, I can get production out of my employees from working from home. And what you see out of the most of the calls that I'm on, you hear the CEOs saying, hey, when they were in the office, I might have got X amount of production and I had to chase them around, get them back to their desk. They're standing at the water cooler. But at home, I'm seeing the numbers go through the roof because they're sitting at home. They're getting their work done. They're actually working longer. Right. So the places, but in my particular business, and I'm glad that I'm agile in this type of way, is that I got a ton of clients to get into that mid-size retail. I got a few larger office developer clients, but I got a lot of people that want to be in the small retail in Walnut Hill, small retail and mid-size retail and all these different neighborhoods. And they're going in, by the boatload. I mean, the landlords are welcoming them because they're like, hey, I want some income. As long as you got a qualified client, I'm ready to do some business.
Okay, so before I transition to Eric so that he can ask you a couple questions I know that he has on the radar, a couple things. One, and I'd be remiss if we didn't do this, give us the name of your company, Ed. And then two, the reason I threw out that question and you made the reference to folks being more productive working at home. Will that change the landscape and the structure of commercial real estate as we see it now? Because folks are saying less is more. You know, we can cut back on that brick and mortar, maybe pay a little bit more of a stipend from working from home, and still get the residual and return on investment that we don't have to worry about that triple net lease.
Yeah, absolutely. So look at it this way. They got that saying about Cincinnati and move to Cincinnati because we're 10 years behind them. Commercial real estate is pretty much the same way. Residential is cutting edge. There's so many residential agents that are amazing that you got to be cutting edge at all times. You got to be figuring out the different edges. But in commercial real estate, you got a lot of guys that are I'll say seasoned in their age, and they've been running these companies the same way for a long time. So if I come along with some new cutting edge thing, the first thing that the landlord or that CEO tells me is, hey, you know, what do we need that for? But right now in these times of COVID, you're starting to see a lot of more of virtual tours being put in. These companies that specialize in 3D and virtual tours and anything to keep people from having to walk through the building. You're starting to see a lot of this stuff that we've been trying to implement for the last couple of years. And landlords were like, hey, first, I don't want to pay that cost. And secondly, why don't you get on the phones and bring people in here in person? You're starting to see those rules go away. And they're just like, whatever you got to do to put some money in my pocket, you do it.
So get creative. So now Michael wants to know, give us the name of your company, Ed.
So my company name is Republic Commercial Real Estate, based out of Fairfield, and I'm a vice president of that company. It's interesting because when I got into commercial real estate, I went to all the big firms, the Cushman Wakefields, the Colliers. They all shot me down. They said no for one reason or another. And I had one company that said yes. And now that I've proven my value in the market, all of those companies want me to go there and come there and bring that particular base of clients to them. I look around, it's kind of interesting to me is that I look around and I probably can count on one hand the amount of commercial brokers here in Cincinnati that exclusively practice commercial. And I think that it needs to change, man. I mean, I go to landlords, I bring tenants that are minorities or that look like me. I bring them to them, and it's like a whole nother world opens up to them. They're like, wow, I never even thought that, that was even it's just not obvious to them that we bring value to the market. So that's kind of a driving factor for me, is to bring that value to them.
Awesome. And before we transition to Eric Denson, always remember this, Ed, when you have that client that's not flexible because they may be stuck in their way somewhat. I think it was Heraclides that said back in the 1500s, nothing is constant but change. And much like commercial real estate, Absolutely. Things are cyclical. There's always going to be that changing cycle. And, I think you have the innovative ideas to be able to implement some of those things. So, Eric, man, we're glad you were able to join us. We know you were trying to get some things worked out. So with that being said, we're talking about commercial real estate. And I know one of the things that you and I talked about offline was getting Ed to really break down a better understanding of that triple net lease and the importance of knowing what you're walking into from a triple net lease standpoint, because that could lead to some other factors. And as I said on the call, getting into the wrong triple net lease is almost like your franchise drafting the wrong quarterback. You're going to be tied into him for about 5 years. So go ahead, Eric, take it away, and let's go from there.
Yeah, first of all, my apologies to the rest of the panel and those following online. I lost connection there a little bit. Glad to be back. But yeah, I like that. Because if you get into the wrong lease, that can set you back as a business for a few years. Triple net lease mainly means that the tenant is going to be responsible for the real estate taxes, the maintenance of the building, maintenance costs, and the building insurance. And so there's some good things about that, and there's some bad things about that. I mean, the good things about it is that, as a tenant, you'll know the bid you'll have to pay for it. I know sometimes in a gross lease, you're just paying to the board, and that gross lease is going to have some built-in for if things break down. With a triple net lease, you're going to know right off the bat if they break down because you're going to be responsible for making them. And so that's some of the pros and cons of that type of lease. But the main thing that someone that's looking for property needs to know, or at least explore before they get into that lease, is just know that that landlord is looking out for themselves for the most part. They're trying to get somebody in the building. They do want a good tenant in there because they do want to service the community, but they do want to make sure that cash flow is coming to them. And so they're going to looking closely at that lease. As a small business, you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself. You want to make sure that you're very familiar with that lease. And I know that, in talking with Ed, there's some different things that you might want to look for when you're going before you sign on that lease. And maybe, Ed, you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Eric. So when you're talking about triple net leases, so I just want to put this in the framework here. When Eric said gross leases, usually you see this in office buildings. You walk in, the landlord just tells you your rent is $5.99 a month, and all you have to pay is your electric and your internet and telephone. That's pretty much what a gross lease is. Now, when we're talking triple net, you typically see this in a retail environment, sometime in office, but majority in like a retail environment. Put you in the mind frame of like a Walgreens or a CVS. Those are triple net leases. They take care of everything in the building, property taxes, electric. We're talking the rent to the landlord, landscaping. They're taking care of everything in the building. It's pretty much theirs, but it's not theirs on the deed. So for however long that lease is, anything breaks down on that property, the roof leaks, anything happens, the tenant takes care of that. Those are good. I mean, if you're a landlord, I know some people on this call that wants to purchase property and things like that. Those are good. I like to call it mailbox money. I mean, you sign that lease and you just sit back and wait on the mailman to come, and you can pick up that check every month. But when you, as a tenant, you want to make sure that you check off different things when you get into that triple net situation, because landlords typically, when they say triple net, they mean that they want you to take care of everything, but you want to do your due diligence up front. You want to make sure that the AC system is not ran down. You want to make sure that if something happens to that AC system, that you put caps in place to stop someone from having you take the full brunt of that cost, because you probably not factored that into your budget. You want to make sure that when you're working with this, you want to budget in a few months of free rent to be able to build your space out, to be able to make sure that you're able to that come along with opening your business in the storefront. So it's small things like that, that a landlord is not gonna, tell you up front. You want to reach out to the city before you even move in any property. You want to reach out to the city, and it's amazing to me how many people don't know this step or take this step. They just see a building. They say, hey, I got a product to sell. I know this product will sell in this area. I'm going to just move here. What you want to do is reach out to the city and speak with the official or the zoning committee or the zoning departments and say, hey, I'm thinking about moving my business here, and this is what I do. And you want to be as clear as possible about the products and the things that you're going to sell, and let that city official tell you, yes, you can go there, the zoning allows it, or no, you cannot go there, because once you sign the lease, you're handcuffed into that unless you want to go and try to litigate it and get out of it in that way. And even then, you still have slim chances of getting out of it.
So Ed, we got a couple of questions. So before we get to those, I know you talked about a triple net lease and a gross lease, right? And one of the things I'd like you to touch on is which one's more beneficial to myself. I'm looking to get into some commercial real estate space. Which one's more beneficial? Because it sounds like to me, that triple net lease, that's like a cash cow for the owner, not necessarily for the individual that's moving into that space. In addition to that, you spoke to getting with the city to make sure it's zoned properly, but how about getting with the utility company to see what those utilities are running, or getting with the water company to see what that water bill is running? More importantly, let's talk about traffic flow. How important is it to figure out that travel pattern in that area to make sure we're going to have the type of traffic where we can factor that into the algorithm in terms of the numbers we're looking to generate to add to our ROI or bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're talking about, I mean, you're absolutely right when you're talking about, traffic flows and different things, but everybody's got a different business model. I mean, you get certain companies I've dealt with that I just signed a lease with recently, and the guy said, I don't care if it's nobody walk past this building all day. Our business doesn't surround around walk-up traffic or drive-by traffic. Actually, we don't even want many people to be in the parking lot because I want my employees to be able to park with no problem. But then you get other people. So I will say this as far as when it comes to triple nets, I'll say this is beneficial to someone who doesn't want to take on the burden of actually owning a building. Because, I mean, when you think about it, a building, purchasing a property, that's a fixed asset. You can't pick that up. You can't move. You can't take that down the street. So some companies, I mean, and not to talk about the bigger companies, but places like a Walmart or a Kroger or something like that, they'll sign a lease for 25 years or something like that, and they'll do a triple net and they'll take care of everything because they'll put an out in there in that lease. And this is important for people who want to sign leases. You'll put a buyout in that lease and say, hey, in six, if things are going bad in this area, not right now, but in 10 years from now, I want to be able to pay 6 months in advance and be able to get out of this lease and pick up my sticks and run. So that's the benefit of a triple net. Yeah, I'm taking on more of the responsibility as far as putting money in, but I get the flexibility to be able to leave when I want to leave. But I would say the traditional guy, the traditional business, I would say try to find you a landlord that's willing to work a gross lease for you. Be worried about your rent, your telephone, your internet, and let that be it. Don't worry about trying to, property taxes and all these other things. Just try to worry about those 3 simple things and then worry about running your business. Running a business is tough enough. You don't want to have to worry about taking care of the landlord's responsibility on top of it.
Absolutely. So we got 2 great questions from Rachel. One for yourself, Mike, and one for you, Ed. So Rachel wants to know for yourself, Ed, do you recommend that we invest in commercial property as another revenue source? If so, what would you suggest as a first investment? That's for yourself. And then Mike, for you, she wants to know, what do you think about these newer platforms such as Robinhood, Acorns, all of those vehicles where they do the roundup accounts and so on and so forth? So Ed, we'll stick with you first, and then Mike will take it to yourself.
Okay, repeat that one more time, Alexander. It kind of froze up on me. I couldn't read.
Yeah, no worries, man. So Rachel wanted to know in terms of do you recommend investing in commercial property, and if so, as a revenue source, and if so, what would you recommend or suggest as a first investment? Was that better, Ed?
Okay, so I'll say this. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I'll say this. It just depends on your risk tolerance, what you want to do, what you're comfortable with. So you get some people who don't want anything to do with office tenants. They don't want anything to do with retail, but they're willing to take on apartments because they understand apartments. They lived in apartments. They can better wrap their mind around an apartment building. So anything 5 units or up is commercial and apartments units. So I would start there. Get you a 2-family, 4-family, 6-family, start there. But if you want to go more in the traditional vein of commercial, I would start with something that definitely has more than one tenant. I try to tell people, unless you're going to be the business that's inside that building, have more than one tenant, because what happens is that you get in there, you sign up a tenant, and they tell you, hey, I'm going to be here for 5 years. I love you as a landlord. And then 3 years in, they ask you to do something. And once you don't do it, they don't want to be there anymore. And once they leave, you don't have any revenue coming in. So I would try to find something where you're 2 units, 4 units, maybe a small strip. You can find a small strip here in Cincinnati for under 100,000, a little bit over 100,000. You can find you a small 2 or 3 tenant strip mall and get in that. If you got a business, put your business in one and try to lease out the other 2. Your business could take care of the mortgage and everything like that, or the other tenants could take the mortgage and your business is just raking in the revenue. So I I would start with something small, but not small enough that if one tenant leaves, it affects you. Start with 2 or 3 tenants.
Great stuff. So Mike, let's go to yourself. And when we're doing the financial blacklist on Saturday morning, we speak to platforms such as Acorns and Robinhood. I like to refer to it as the starter kit. Outside of your work 401k or 403b, I think it's a great platform with the roundups. So go ahead and speak to that.
I think that I'm a proponent of anything that has you save automatically. When you're looking at Acorns and you're basically saving money through your everyday spending habits. So the way the Acorns work is attached to your debit card. If you go out and you buy something for $9.50, it automatically rolls that up to $10, and that 50 cents goes into an investment account that you set up. So in the beginning, when you set that app up, it asks you for your risk tolerance. So you basically answer some questions. It comes up with a platform for you to invest according to your risk tolerance. So anything that you can automatically save, especially for younger folks who are going out, hanging out on Friday nights, spending a lot of money on some things that are not going to reciprocate, I believe that it's a necessity to be able to help you start in wealth generation.
Looks like we have
okay. Go ahead, Eric.
It looks like we have a couple more questions here in the chat. One is a follow-up to you, Ed. It says, do you recommend investing out of state?
Well, I do.
And I'd imagine that a lot of that depends on your familiarity.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. I recommend investing out of state if you know of an area that is on the uprise, or you know of an area that you know of a property you can get in on. I say do it, but I'm a big proponent of invest where you can see the property, invest where you can put your hands on the property until you get that level of experience built up where you know how to put the pieces in play. Because a lot of that time you're investing out of town, you got to factor in management costs. You got to factor in the different municipalities. You got to factor in all these things. And if you're not comfortable with being able to give that much trust to somebody else, and you're not making enough revenue to be able to do that off of the property to be able to hire a management company, I say invest at home first until you build up a little bit of, skin in the game, and you got some properties and you're comfortable with the process, and then take the show on the road.
Great stuff. And I think the reason Rachel asked that question is because she's not in Cincinnati, much like myself. I don't know where she's at, but I'm in Atlanta. So great question. Yeah. And Eric, can you go ahead and take Roxy's question? Roxy had a great question as well.
Sure. And real quick, Rachel also had someone had a follow-up as far as tax breaks. And I can address that real quick.
Yep.
I work for the City of Cincinnati Department of Community and Economic Development
on tax breaks.
And so, I work for the City of Cincinnati Department of Community and Economic Development. So we do have some to people that invest in their properties. It's called a Community Reinvestment Area Tax Exemption Program. It's for commercial property and residential property. If there's 3 units or less, we treat that as residential. And so you can have a tax break so that the taxes don't go up as the result of the improvements that you make on your property for a 10-year period. That's on the residential side. The commercial side is a little different. Typically on those types of agreements, we take those through City Council for approval, and we're looking for some type of job creation. But it does happen. We do quite a few of them, actually. The process is just a little different. On the commercial side, you actually have to get approved by City Council before you make those improvements. And on the residential side, you make the improvements first, and then you apply for the tax abatement.
That's good.
But we have more information about that on our website at choosecincy.com.
And if you could, Eric, if you don't mind, repeat that program again so that everyone gets it.
Sure. It's the it's the Community Reinvestment Area Tax Exemption Program, or CRA. Not to be confused with CRA that a lot of people think of when they think of banks investing in certain areas. This is Community Reinvestment Area as it refers to tax tax breaks. And again, it's both on the residential side and on the commercial side. The key thing that I want to mention on that is that on the residential side, you can do first, then apply. On the commercial side, you have to get approved by city council first before you make the improvements. And that's just an Ohio rig that we have to follow. Unfortunately, we run into a few people that make the improvements first, then try to apply on the commercial side, and we just can't get around the rigs on that type of situation.
And that's great stuff, Eric. Rachel was on fire. She said, what is the name of the investment forum you mentioned? And is it open to new participants? Man, I tell you what, we're throwing out so much good stuff on this call. I'm not sure exactly which one I mentioned, Rachel, but if you can kind of recall my memory, I'm sure I have it written down. So Mike, why don't you go ahead and transition us? You know, we've been able to great stuff. We've talked about building wealth. We've talked about the importance and investing in commercial real estate. Why don't you go ahead and transition us and we'll go from there.
There was one additional question I think Rachel also had about what are financing options if you don't have financing for a lot or residential lot. Well, you could also look at group economics where you put together a plan, see an architect, have a drawing, put together a pro forma, and then actually go after investors who might be willing to invest for return and help you get that project done. So it just depends on what the project is and on what type of return you're willing to pay folks to be able to invest in that. So
absolutely.
I think
and Mike, real quick, I'm sorry. She jogged my memory. Rachel did. I threw out Acorns as well as Robinhood, and yes, Acorns is an open forum. I actually joined it last October, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you, just nickel and diming and putting away some funds. I've been able to accrue right at $2,000 without even thinking about it. So I strongly advise the platform, Acorns. It's also managed by Aviva, which is the world's third largest asset manager in the U.S. So go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think what we're talking about next is we're going to talk about what's some options for small businesses when it comes to development. And as I see it over time, I've noticed that when development is done in communities of color or what have you, it's not necessarily done with the priorities of those particular folks, those legacy folks who have lived in that neighborhood. There hasn't been much consideration for them. So when we look at gentrification and how it impacts small businesses, when a neighborhood changes over and you have a Black business that might have been there for years, and it starts to change the demographic of the folks that have been living there, then you turn to look to see how does that impact that small business. If they're raising rents in that particular community or neighborhood, is it eliminating the folks who have traditionally been customers of that and consumers of that particular store? And also, when it raises rents, how does it impact that business? Does that business go from where it was maybe paying $12 a square foot to be able to lease that particular space to now it goes up to maybe $60 or $70 to be able to rent that space? So some things that I try to advise small businesses, and I've been in business banking for about 29 years, and actually I'm a market manager at a particular bank. I advise small businesses to get involved in the community, not just to run your small business, but also if there's a community council there, take the time to go to community council meetings, introduce yourself, get involved, and be part of the plan. If there's a community development corporation or a CDC in that particular neighborhood, and they're willing to meet and they're willing to hear some of your ideas for that particular community or neighborhood, please go sit down and talk to them and share what your ideas and what your visions are. Because if not, if they don't have someone who's actually an advocate for that particular community or situation, they're going to do whatever they want, and however it impacts your business, it does. So I'm saying to small businesses, you cannot just run that small business. And if you're in a community, an African-American community, you can't just get up every single day and go about your business. I think where we lag behind is that we don't get up every single day looking for opportunities in our own particular neighborhood. If you're in a neighborhood and there's 3 buildings or 3 homes in that neighborhood who might be vacant or blighted, walk down there and see what potential it might have. You might be able to invest or purchase that particular property. You might get it from a sheriff's sale, or it might be tax delinquent. You might be able to acquire that property, and with several other neighbors, you might be able to renovate, put that particular property on the market, sell it to someone you know, and now you're raising what the market prices are in your neighborhood. So you're going to start to get some appreciation, not only for your property, but the surrounding properties in that particular neighborhood. So now you're helping to set a market. You're helping to bring more appreciation to not only yourself and your neighbors. Now your neighborhood becomes more valuable, and hopefully it does that with people that look like you and I.
So, and I'm gonna segue this to Eric after I ask you this question, Mike, because it looks like we missed one from Roxy.
Okay.
She said, what if you happen to own land, but you're lacking the resources to invest in building on the land? What would yourself or Ed suggest, and Eric as well? We kind of round robin this one as to maybe some ideas, some creative ideas and solutions you all would have for Roxy.
Well, number one, look around your neighborhood, and when Ed talked about going to talk to the city, try to find out what your neighborhood needs, what your community needs. If your community needs, if it's a food desert and it doesn't have good grocery stores or produce, then maybe you can go and you can find somebody that's like-minded, get some money from the particular city because they recognize that it's absent of a good healthy food opportunity, and then you can work with folks. But I always say that there is a stigma in our community that we don't want to work together. But you can always find like-minded folks, start an investment group, get an LLC started, start an operating agreement, a members agreement, start to contribute money monthly, and add up a pot. And then you can start doing due diligence on that particular, those particular assemblage of land. So you can get an architect and maybe draw a rendering, talk to an architect. But that's after you do, environmental study and maybe borings or what have you, to make sure that the soil is something that you can actually build on. But then you can start to put together plans. So nothing happens in development. Nothing happens fast, and nothing happens without capital. So again, try to find like-minded folks like you that want to contribute to your particular vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it looks like we had 2 more questions, but Ed, I want to throw it to you to see if you have something to add, as well as Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on what the land is. So let's just say you had, 20 acres, 10 acres or something like that, and it's in a pretty decent place that gets a lot of traffic. Maybe if you don't have the income or the resources to build the structures on that, maybe you go to investment groups, because there's several investment groups that are minority. Maybe you go to them and say, hey, look, I know you guys got the capital, you guys want to build, but you may not per se want to go in and do the legwork of getting this thing off the ground. So maybe you be the let's say beacon to go out and get the permits from the city, to go out and get you a phase 1 and phase 2. Make sure that land is as be built on as possible, with and then go to them with a package and say, hey, look, I've done all the legwork. You come in, you do what you do, and then you pay me a lease on it. And these guys, these groups, they're around here, and they'll come in long as the land is ready for them to do what they want to do with it. If they do their statistics and run their numbers, and they see that it's valuable enough for them to do something, if you have that thing as properly ready as possible, these guys will come in and take it from there. And you set you up a lease, and you sit back and you make you some money that can help your family build some wealth.
So great stuff. A quick question before we transition to Eric: Who are these groups? Danny Smith wants to know who are these groups. In addition to that, give me specific names and talk to me a little bit more about a phase 1 and phase 2. Everyone may not be privy to that knowledge yet, so we want to make sure that we're clear: phase 1, phase 2, and who these groups are.
Okay, so let me tackle the phase one, phase two. So phase one is that you come in. Let's just say you get a plot of land that either you purchase or you get passed down from your family. It's just an open plot. You don't know what's going on under the ground. So when a developer comes along and they want to build on something, they have to go down and find out if there's any toxins in the ground. Maybe it used to be a gas station. Maybe there are old gas tankers in the ground. That phase one is for them to find that and be able to, and then you'll be able to make your decision if you're going to get that out of the ground to make that. Where you have all kinds of people.
And just to help, sorry, go ahead. I'm trying to help out Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. You want to run with it?
No, you got frozen just for a second, so I was going to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
yeah, so
go ahead, Ed.
And you guys are being so nice, man.
Just to finish that thought.
One thing I was going to also say is take a step back for a second. That I was remiss in saying is that if you do have that land and you don't have the capital or the expertise, you can actually find a developer and you can just have a development agreement done, and you could just contribute the land to a project. So they'll do a development agreement. They'll assume the land for a certain value. They'll go ahead and do their development. And then at the end, once they get it leased or they sell it or whatever, they'll pay you out at the end. So you don't have to get any money to get in. You're just contributing that particular land. You tell them what the return you want to get. You allow them to do what they want to do. At the end, you get paid.
Good stuff. And real quick, Ed, you did a great job of speaking of phase one and phase two. I'm glad you cleared that up because I thought you were talking about my over 50 workout when you said phase one. That was really confused, man. Next thing, I'm glad you broke that down. Give me some specific companies that Roxy, Danita, and Rachel can look to for this. That would be great.
Yeah. So I'll off the top of my head, I'll say one for sure that I know that are minority guys that are here and they're invested in projects, and it's called Rise. They're doing a lot of some good stuff over there. A lot of younger guys, they're pulled their money together, they're pulled their resources together, and they're invested in projects. And I believe that they're still open to receiving people in. I'm just not 100%. I'm not officially affiliated with that group, but I know that they're doing a lot of good stuff in the neighborhood here or in the city of Cincinnati. They're starting to really get going. So yeah, Rise.
So is that an acronym? Is Rise an acronym? Does that stand for something, or is that?
Yeah. I believe it's an acronym.
It's actually called iRise. It's called iRise.
Yeah, iRise.
And what does iRise stand for?
I don't know. I think it's iRise or like individually iRise, but Andrew Tudor is one of the gentlemen that actually head that group. But just let folks know that actually I started a investment group with 12 African Americans, and we raised money, purchased land, and are on the cusp of doing our first particular project. And on this particular project, we're actually, it's called Bat Boy LLC. We're actually partnering with Unum Investments.
Okay.
That's awesome. So I went ahead and put in there, Andrew Tudor is one of the gentlemen working for iRise. So I'm just trying to keep up with all these questions and keep things moving along. So I just put that in there. And then there was two other questions. First off, before I get to a question, Rachel said, this is great information. You guys are the best panel so far. Now I added that last part, but she did say so no. But listen, she wants to know if Lisa asked, let me scroll back up because could opportunity zones provide opportunities in some neighborhoods for development? That I want you to take that one, Mike, and for yourself, Ed. Rachel asked the question that more or less about purchasing properties under a tax lien from a commercial standpoint. Would you suggest that? And that's the first time I've ever heard that. So would you suggest that I'm gonna go to you first, Mike, and then Ed, I'll go to you. And Mike, let me reread your question because we've been jumping around a little bit. Could opportunity zones provide opportunities in some neighborhoods for development? And Eric, I need you to chime in with anything you have on that one as well.
Yes, they could. OZ or opportunity zones could provide opportunities in some neighborhoods, but understanding opportunity zones are when folks have capital gain. So they sell a business or they sell stocks or what have you. They get a large amount of capital gains and they go to somebody. They might go to a bank and say, you have an opportunity zone fund. I want to put my money in and you can go ahead and invest that for me. So that fund goes around the country and they look for investments to put that particular money in. But remember, that money is not a loan. That money is actual equity. So, they actually will put that money in, but they're going to actually own a portion of your particular project. So you have to look at it and say, is my project large enough for somebody to actually come in and own a portion of that particular project? And when you're looking at capital gains, you're looking at millions and millions and millions of particular dollars. So, and those funds look for, like I said, it's countrywide. So when you look at a place like Cincinnati that might have 1 or 2 cranes in the air at any given point, and then you go somewhere like Seattle that might have 10 cranes in the air, 10, 12 cranes in the air, they might look at that other place as a bigger opportunity because it's more projects going on and they can invest that particular money. So yes, it could work, but you would have to have a pretty sizable project to take that opportunity zone money.
Absolutely. And Eric, is there anything you want to
add? That's the way I pretty much understand it. I think he hit it pretty much right on the head with opportunity zones. There's a lot of information out there. The city actually still doing some information gathering because there are some located within the city and around the city. And I could probably at some point do some follow up with the person that had a question on that. At least to help them identify the properties that have been identified as Cincinnati area, at least.
And that was Lisa Washington, if I'm not mistaken. And yes, Lisa Washington. And then Danita, that's Dawnita Smith. She wants to know if we can mail out a list of some of these, one-off companies we're throwing off. Maybe we can kind of put together a master list between everybody and shoot that out. That would be great. So Ed, I got a question for yourself. They say that there's strength in numbers, right? And if there's strength in numbers, when you look in inner city communities, knowing there's strength in numbers, and we always hear, let's just buy the block, right? If there's strength in numbers and we should just buy the block, why does it seem like from a commercial real estate standpoint that African-American communities seem to get infiltrated with everyone else and inundated with everyone else outside other than ourselves in terms of making purchases? And are there any groups that are working together to try to buy, a piece of residential, a piece of commercial, so that we can then, move those accordingly?
And you might have to mute on it.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
there we go.
So you hear this? You hear the story kind of play out around the United States, and pretty much every city is that the place was blighted or it was ran a certain way for so long, and then all of a sudden it gets gentrified, and then people have to move out, find other places. And then it becomes, a playground for everybody else. So what I look at it like this is that we grew up in these neighborhoods. Majority of us grew up in these different places, or we know family members that are in these places. And let's just take Over the Rhine for an instance. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Mount Auburn, we used to come down, go to Smitty's or go to the Kroger. A lot of the people, even us as being residents of the area, you were a little leery about going down into certain parts of it. But that could have been a huge opportunity. Those properties back then, I spoke with a gentleman. He bought 2 apartment buildings back then. He spent maybe $18,000. He had 2 apartment buildings, I think he had maybe 18 to 20 units in each building or so. And he sat on them. He waited and he tried to fix them up. He didn't really like the tenants that he was going to be bringing in. And this is an African-American male. And he decided to, when the wave came along, he was able to sell it and create some value for his family and create some wealth for his family. So I look at it like this. If, you're in these neighborhoods, you drive through these neighborhoods, we got the front row seat to see what's going on in the neighborhood. So if you got a building there that's been sitting on that particular block or that particular corner for the last 10 years and nobody has owned it, it's ran down or it's blighted in some type of way, it's an opportunity for you to reach out to see what taxes is on the property. What can we do to be able to buy it? So a lot of these properties are under $5,000. You'll be able to put that money together, save that money up, and purchase that property. And even at the time that you purchase, you might not have enough money to actually fix it and bring it back to life, but you'll be able to carry the taxes because the taxes are probably little to none right at the moment. And you'll be able to carry that and be able to over time fix on it or figure out your plan on how you want to execute on the property. But I say that if it's a few of us together, it's enough of us around that make decent money, make good money, make good livings, that we can pull money together like our Rise, like Mike's group, that can come into these neighborhoods and we can get first pickings at these properties before a bigger conglomerate or a bigger developer comes along. Because once the word is out, the word is out. And I'm pretty much sure that it's only probably a handful of us that's able to compete with the 3CDC or somebody like that as an independent person. So if you can get in there first, because we're there, and you can start picking off stuff, I say do it. Get in there first and get it now.
So I would just say, just like you three gentlemen all mentioned before, it's all about being more opportunistic, thinking more strategically. Especially, a lot of times when businesses come to the city, we tell them to consider renting first before owning, because when you're running a business, a lot of times that's enough. You don't want to have to worry about problems that may come up with owning property, having to fix it up, that type of thing. But once you level off and you're doing well and you start growing your company or you're growing your business, that's probably a real good time to start being more strategic, looking around to see what properties around your business are available or may be available, because that's a good way for you to extra for what's happening to your business as well as what's happening to the rest of that community. And it all, again, some of it, again, ties back to what Mike was talking about earlier. It's so important for whether you're a resident or a business to be involved with your community council, with your community development corporation, because a lot of times that's the way to find out what's going on in and around you. And the city itself, we look to community councils, we look to the community development corporation to find out what should happen there. And so if you're involved, that's a good way for you to have a voice. Because some of these councils may not have a whole lot of people representing them. And so you might be able to, sort of steer the direction of how things should go based on, your planning for what you like to see in your area.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to add on there, Alex.
Real quick, and I'm gonna come right back to you. Eric, you're the only one. We want to make sure that all of our information is in the chat. Please go ahead and put your information in the chat, and go do it. Right back to you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I just want folks to know that your city, whatever city you're in, whatever neighborhood or community you're in, the city is a big monopoly board. And there are literally people who wake up every single day who are playing the game. They're waking up every day looking for opportunities, and they're putting themselves in circles where folks can update them on what's going on, keep them abreast of what's happening on this street or that street, what developers are coming in. And it's a reason when you look at the panel that we have here, we all know each other personally, and it's a reason why, because we're all connected in what we want to do. So I say spend the time every day getting up, looking for opportunities, build your circle of folks that are like-minded, who have different skill sets, who are in the wealth building or real estate industry. Add them to your circle and educate yourself use time. And now you're in a pandemic, people are at home, spend time reading books and educating yourself in what you want to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ed, as we transition back to yourself, we talk about putting these groups together. We talk about folks coming out, looking and being prepared to hunt on a daily basis. But that also has a lot to do with the mindset. We have to switch our mindset from a consumer base to an investor base and priority base, because I think if we start looking from a priority base, we'll start looking at the long game. That gentleman you spoke to, Ed, that purchased the 2 buildings for about 18 grand. You brought up some old memories talking about Smitty's and things like that, but that's a whole other story. But that'll put your mind in a space of looking at a long game as opposed to just looking at things short term. And I think oftentimes that's why we miss the opportunities, because we can't see past, right in front of our face with the opportunities that are presented to us.
Absolutely, man. I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I look at it this way. You got to be willing to expose yourself to something different. You look at it and if the only thing you want to know is what your particular niche is, whether that be daycare, whether that be salon, whether that be these different other trades, that's fine and well. You make a majority of your money with that, but be willing to be open to commercial real estate purchasing your building, because I know at one point or another, especially if you're in a neighborhood that society deems as not the end neighborhood right now, I'm guaranteeing your landlord is going to come to you at some point and say, hey, you've been here for the last 5 years. I really want to get out of this property. I'll give you a discount to sell it to you, and I can move on about my way. And 90% of people, sad to say, they turn it down. They just say, look, I run my business. That's all I want you to do is be the landlord and I'll be the tenant. But you can't run it that way. You got to be open to opportunities, because they're going to come fast. And if you miss them, next thing you know, somebody else will own the building and they'll be raising the rents and you'll be moving on. So you got to think, like Alexander said, think the long game, because that's what majority of these, especially in commercial real estate, are well built. And I would believe in general is thinking about not tomorrow, but 10 years from now, what my kids going to get out of this, what my grandkids will get out of this, and what me and my business will get out of this if I make this move.
Well, I always think short, intermediate, long game. And I'm going to come to you, Mike. Right. And before I come to you, guys, a couple of things. I want to tell you that you guys have been so awesome in this forum that as the moderator, I have to let you know, we just surpassed the numbers for Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight on the verses in terms of the so I just want to let you guys know that. So I would sing a little bit for you guys on my own. Right, let's get back to it. So with that being said, as we get ready to kind of give our final thoughts and wrapping up, what I'd like for each of you to do is kind of give a quick summation of just your thoughts on, from a standpoint of wealth building, commercial real estate, making sure that we're setting our footprint and infiltrating ourselves in our communities to make sure that our communities are truly for us, by us, so to speak. So Eric, I want to start with yourself.
Okay. A couple of the points that Mike touched on earlier, as far as trying to close the wealth gap, starting a business or entrepreneurship. That's one good way, because the statistics show that we're not going to catch up working on the job. Always going to be. So if you do have a skill, or if you are able to produce a product and you can go into entrepreneurship, that's one way to make advances into closing that wealth gap. And there are many groups in town that can help you get started if you have an idea already. And I'll go ahead and plug them real fast. There's a group called MBAC, the Minority Business Assistance Center. Deborah Davis, they were behind putting this event together. They do a fabulous job helping businesses get started. There's a group called SCORE. They're a group of retired executives that lend their services to people. There's small business development centers here in Cincinnati, as well as pretty much all around the country, that if you look to them for assistance as far as getting your business off the ground. At least here in Cincinnati, if you need help with funding and getting your business off the ground, there's a group that the City Enterprise Initiative, headed up by Willie Hill. They're located out in Roseline Bond Hill area. They offer small business loans to startups, as well as a group called ECDI. They're located in Over the Rhine in Cincinnati. They also are a micro lender here in town. So as far as trying to close the wealth gap by entrepreneurship, the city has a lot of resources available, a lot of free resources available. That's another thing that I want to emphasize, that before you go paying an attorney to do this or that, nothing against attorneys, but a lot of these groups provide the service for free. And then tackling things on the real estate side, because you guys did a real good job of covering how real estate can help close the wealth gap, and that property typically appreciates. And it's also something that can be handed down past yourself down to your kids and further. The key things about that is just doing your due diligence, making sure that it's the right property for you, making sure that there's a market for that property. Again, one good way is to reach out for the city for that, reach out to community groups. Before you go too far down the road, you can look into permitting. The city has a website called Open Cincy. Whether that property can be used for the purpose that you want to use it for. And so those are the two things that I wanted to sort of touch on again, was entrepreneurship and real estate development.
Absolutely. And Mike, before we go to yourself, everyone, we thank you. Is doing a great job of putting their notes in the chat. Dr. J.C. Baker said, J.C. Baker and Associates in the Business Hospital. We do it globally, but he made sure to let you know he does not get paid for practice. So if you go see him, get that checkbook ready. Go ahead, Mike.
Historically, if you purchase a home, it appreciates 3 to 5% a year. If you invest in blue chip stocks, historically, they return 10% per year. We, as African Americans, are 13% of the population, but we only own 2% of the businesses, of small businesses that have actual employees. So these are actual facts and actual stats. So it tells you, if you participate in real estate, if you purchase stock, that you're going to get a return on that. And I think what's even more crucial, and I think back to a time, because Ed and I had a transaction we were working on one time, and Ed actually came to the transaction with, I believe, his nephew. We cannot overlook the power of talking to our kids daily about entrepreneurship, about real estate investing, about business in general, because those are going to be the folks that, if we have anything, we're going to pass it down to them. And we need them to start thinking about how to be the leaders for the next generation. It's not too early for a 13-year-old to set up a business. It's not too early for a set of college kids to pool their money together and start buying a duplex. When you go to college, and instead of leasing and renting a dorm room or an apartment, if you got 4 or 5 kids that are working, pull a few $1,000s together and buy that apartment or buy that condo they're in. We have got to start relaying the information that we know. I think it was Bruce Lee said, when you have kids, don't buy them all the things you wish you had. Teach them all the things that you didn't know. So that's incumbent upon us to be able to do that and help that generation start to build wealth at an earlier age.
That's great stuff. And I, you guys did such an awesome job of covering everything that I'm going to take kind of a different approach. So I posted something the other day on @Caliber REI Group on Instagram. It was something to the effect of, more or less, we'll teach our kids how to buy a pair of Jordans, but we'll never talk to them about the stock market. And, think about that. Think about the impact. We always talk about creating generational wealth. It takes 2 to 3 generations to create generational wealth. It only takes 1 day or 1 hour or less to make an impact. So, I want to give you a couple of things. We have to, as African Americans, we have to stop working in silos. That's first and foremost. We have to understand we can't do everything alone. You have to be willing to plan the work and work the plan. As Mike said, and as Ed said, you have to surround yourself with like-minded individuals. But keep this in mind. Something that whenever I do a speaking engagement, I always speak to is 3 of the lost arts in our community are communication, networking, and follow-up. You're only as good as your communication and the network around you, and more importantly, how you follow up. Not just when you need something, but just to check on Ed and say, hey, Ed, I hope everything is going great. That way, when you come to Ed with a question about commercial real estate, he's not always thinking you're just coming when you need something. But more importantly, the last question I have for you is, what is your plan for their future? What is your plan for their future? As Mike said, Ed bringing his nephew to the transaction, Mike starting, what he did with the Bat Boys. We have to start putting a plan in play for those that are coming behind us. And with that being said, Ed Mathis, Mike Smith, Eric Denson, I'm Alexander Pizzo. We really greatly appreciate everyone that has gotten on the platform today to listen in to us. And guys, if you have anything else you'd like to say in closing, feel free to do so. But at this point in time, I really appreciate everyone's time. I see Willie Hill just posted his information. It's always great to see old friends on the call. So I appreciate everyone's time, man. You guys knocked it out. You guys knocked it out of the park, man. And again, I'm gonna have to have a conference call with Gladys and Patty, because they're not gonna be too happy that you broke their numbers.
Yeah, I think we got one more on here about tax liens. If anybody wants to take that on, about, looks like it says purchasing properties with tax liens.
That was,
I know that's handled by the county.
Yeah, that was a question that was originally asked by Rachel, and then she wanted to retract her initial question.
Okay.
And then she came back with that. So what I would suggest is we have everyone's information has been posted out there. Be willing to, if you could, copy and paste that information. I was asking that all of that did not be forgotten. So actually, Rachel, I don't know if you dropped off. We actually touched on that, but we can go ahead and recap real quick before we have to jump off. So Ed, you want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah. So I've dealt with this some, and I mostly dealt with this when I deal with and developers. So we'll go into I've dealt with a few developers that did work up there by Uptown and the Martin Luther King Exchange there. So when we go in, some properties, they got tax problems, tax liens. The developer is really careful, and I'll give you this bit of advice. You have to be really careful and do your due diligence really well. I mean, you want to get all of the information you can, whether that be from the city, on that property, before you go to either that owner or go to the city and try to figure out some kind of way to purchase that. I believe the developer I was working with purchased, they were able to get the property long as they paid off the taxes. But most closing agencies, when you go to the closing table, they're going to make sure that you take care of all those taxes anyways. So you just try out some kind of deal to acquire that, and it might just be you pay off the taxes or take care of the lien, and then we're able to transfer the property over to you. But I would just say, if I have to give you
real quick, Ed, I'm sorry, speak to tax deeds versus tax liens.
So and like I said, I haven't done many of these, but I have done some, and I would say when we have done some of these, I would just say just try to reach out to the city, figure out what they want to do, figure out what they have on it, and then just do your due diligence, man, because you don't want to get into that and then you buy it and you next thing you know, you got a ton of stuff and you can't transfer the deed over to you. That's the worst situation ever, to spend your money and then the deed can't transfer over to you. So you want to make sure you do all of that and get all your due diligence done up front. And I try to tell this to people all the time, and they try to tiptoe around the due diligence process, especially in commercial real estate, because there's no stop places in place like it is in residential. Commercial real estate is either you do your due diligence or you get a bad deal. So you want to make sure that you reach out to the title agency, make sure they're running title searches, make sure that everything is done possible for you to safeguard yourself from getting a bad deal or getting a bad tax situation once you purchase that property.
Good stuff. Mike, anything you'd like to add with that?
I just agree with Ed. You go to get a title search. The title search is going to tell the story. It's going to tell the story. And if you find somebody that might have a tax lien on their home, I would say reach out to them, send them a letter, and ask them, do they want to sell the property? Because if they do have a tax lien, chances are, if it's a significant amount, they might go ahead and lose their property and get nothing. So you might want to write a letter to them and say, hey, I know you got some delinquent taxes. Would you like to sell your property? I'm willing to talk about it and see if you get a response. And quite frankly, it happens a lot. You know, people will respond when they know that they're going to lose their property, not get it dime. They might be willing to sell it just to get something for it and keep it moving. And it could be tax delinquent code violations, not paying their taxes. All those things are pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff, Mike. I actually bought a home that was going into foreclosure that way some years ago when I was back in Cincinnati. Because I had a personal relationship. I had cultivated a relationship with the gentleman, and I went to him offline. And, you know, I'm a firm believer. People do business with two types of people they know and people they trust. And because he and I cultivated a relationship, it allowed me to do a transaction and get the financing and the funding and get the deal closed, pay him some money that he wouldn't have gotten had we not done the deal, and he would have lost the property. So that's a great call on that. Eric, anything you want to add?
I think you guys are hitting it right on the head. I was going to just pretty much thank you guys for lending your expertise, your knowledge, being willing to share all of this information. I think it's good information. I think it's information that people want to hear. So I really appreciate you all giving us your time, and I appreciate the fact that this conference is happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, you know, we want to say thank you to the We Mean Business 2020 virtual conference and this platform, Ms. Deborah Davis and everyone else that invited us. For Ed Mathis, Mike Smith, Eric Denson, you guys did a phenomenal job. I appreciate you all allowing me to be a portion of your platform and to speak on this today. And again, man, we just want to say thank you to everyone that asked the questions. Hopefully we were able to answer just about every question in detail and kind of give you some call to actions and things of that nature. So again, we just like to say thank you. And for that, I think we're ready to sign off, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I believe we're supposed to turn it over to Mr. Bernard Johnson for closing remarks for today.
Awesome.
So everyone stick around for that.
All right, good deal.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, guys.